Question 1. Who is primarily accountable for managing the product backlog, including its content, order, and availability? A. The Scrum Master. B. The developers. C. The product owner. D. The stakeholders. Answer: C. The product owner. The product owner is solely accountable for maximizing the value of the product resulting from the work of the Scrum team, and this includes the effective management of the product backlog. This accountability ensures that the most valuable work is prioritized and available for the developers to select, directly linking to the Scrum principle of transparency. For example, if new customer feedback comes in, the product owner decides where that item fits in the product backlog to best serve the product's vision. Always remember that the product owner is the voice of the customer and the business, guiding the product's direction through the product backlog. Question 2. What is the main purpose of the daily Scrum? A. To report progress to the Scrum Master. B. To discuss problems and impediments with stakeholders. C. To inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt the sprint backlog as necessary. D. To review the increment created in the previous day. Answer: C. To inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt the sprint backlog as necessary. The daily Scrum is a key inspect and adapt event for the developers, where they synchronize their activities and create a plan for the next 24 hours to work toward the sprint goal. It is not a status meeting for the Scrum Master or stakeholders but rather a focused opportunity for the developers to self-manage their work. For instance, if a developer uncovers an unexpected challenge, the team can use the daily Scrum to collaboratively adjust their approach to stay on track for the sprint goal. Think of it as a quick huddle for the team to make sure they are still heading in the right direction together. Question 3. What does "done" mean in Scrum? A. All tasks for a product backlog item have been completed. B. The product owner has accepted the product backlog item. C. The increment is usable and meets the definition of done. D. The product backlog item is ready to be released to customers. Answer: C. The increment is usable and meets the definition of done. The definition of done is a formal description of the state of the increment when it meets the quality measures required for the product. When a product backlog item meets the definition of done, it means the increment is usable by stakeholders and potentially releasable, ensuring transparency about the work completed. For example, if "done" includes testing and documentation, an item isn't complete until those criteria are met, regardless of whether the code is written. This shared understanding of "done" is crucial for ensuring quality and transparency throughout the sprint. Question 4. How does the Scrum Master support the product owner? A. By ordering the items in the product backlog. B. By ensuring that the product backlog is clear and concise. C. By facilitating stakeholder communication and engagement for the product owner. D. By creating product backlog items on behalf of the product owner. Answer: C. By facilitating stakeholder communication and engagement for the product owner. The Scrum Master serves the product owner in several ways, including helping them find techniques for effective product backlog management and facilitating stakeholder collaboration as requested or needed. The Scrum Master does not directly manage the product backlog or create items, as those are the product owner's accountabilities. For instance, the Scrum Master might help the product owner prepare for a sprint review by ensuring key stakeholders are invited and understand their role. Remember, the Scrum Master acts as a coach and facilitator, empowering the product owner to excel in their role. Question 5. What is the primary purpose of the sprint review? A. To inspect the increment and adapt the product backlog if needed. B. To inspect how the last sprint went with regards to individuals, interactions, processes, and tools. C. To report progress to management and external stakeholders. D. To get approval from the product owner for the work completed. Answer: A. To inspect the increment and adapt the product backlog if needed. The sprint review is a collaborative working session where the Scrum team and stakeholders inspect the increment created during the sprint and discuss what was done, what has changed in their environment, and what to do next. This inspection often leads to adjustments to the product backlog for future sprints, making it a critical point of adaptation. For example, stakeholders might see a new feature and suggest an immediate improvement, which the product owner would then consider adding to the product backlog. It's a key feedback loop to ensure the product remains valuable and relevant. Question 6. A Scrum team finds that their definition of done is not sufficient, leading to quality issues. Who is accountable for improving the definition of done? A. The Scrum Master. B. The developers. C. The product owner. D. The entire Scrum team. Answer: D. The entire Scrum team. The Scrum team is accountable for creating a valuable, useful increment every sprint, and this includes evolving the definition of done. While the developers are committed to adhering to it, and the Scrum Master coaches on its importance, the definition of done is a shared commitment that the entire Scrum team collaboratively agrees upon and adapts over time. For instance, if new technical standards emerge, the whole team would discuss and update their definition of done to incorporate these. This shared accountability ensures quality is built into the product from the start. Question 7. Which of the following is a core Scrum value? A. Transparency. B. Velocity. C. Efficiency. D. Predictability. Answer: A. Transparency. The 5 Scrum values are commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage, which all foster the 3 pillars of empiricism: transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Transparency, while a pillar of empiricism, is strongly supported by and intertwined with the Scrum values, particularly openness and courage. When a Scrum team embraces these values, they create an environment where the work and the process are visible to all, enabling inspection and adaptation. For example, if a developer openly shares a challenge they're facing, that demonstrates courage and openness, contributing to overall transparency within the team. Question 8. What does a Scrum Master do when the developers are having trouble self-managing and organizing their work? A. Assign tasks to individual developers. B. Direct the developers on how to organize their work. C. Coach the developers in self-management and cross-functionality. D. Report the issue to their functional manager. Answer: C. Coach the developers in self-management and cross-functionality. The Scrum Master is a servant leader who supports the developers by coaching them in organizational environments where Scrum is not yet fully adopted and understood. They do not act as a manager who assigns tasks or dictates work, as this would undermine the self-managing nature of the Scrum team. For example, if the developers are struggling to prioritize during the daily Scrum, the Scrum Master might ask guiding questions like, "What is the most important thing to achieve the sprint goal today?" to help them find their own solution. Their role is to enable the team, not control it. Question 9. Who is accountable for creating the sprint goal? A. The product owner. B. The Scrum Master. C. The developers. D. The Scrum team. Answer: D. The Scrum team. During sprint planning, the entire Scrum team collaborates to define a sprint goal, which is a single objective for the sprint. While the product owner brings the product backlog items that shape the what, and the developers figure out the how, the sprint goal is a shared commitment that provides focus and flexibility to the team during the sprint. For instance, if the product owner wants to implement a new login system, the team might collectively craft a sprint goal like enable secure user authentication to unite their efforts. This collaborative effort ensures everyone is aligned towards a common objective. Question 10. How often should the product backlog be refined? A. Only during sprint planning. B. As needed, whenever new information emerges. C. At least once every sprint, typically during a dedicated product backlog refinement meeting. D. it is an ongoing activity that can happen at any time. Answer: D. It is an ongoing activity that can happen at any time. Product backlog refinement is the act of breaking down and further defining product backlog items into smaller, more precise items. It is an ongoing process, not a formal event, and the product owner and developers collaborate on it whenever necessary to ensure the product backlog is clear, transparent, and understood. For example, if the developers finish their current task early, they might spontaneously pick up an unrefined item and work with the product owner to clarify its details. This continuous activity ensures the product backlog always contains ready items for upcoming sprints. Question 11. What is the time box for a sprint retrospective? A. Maximum 8 hours for a 1-month sprint. B. Maximum 4 hours for a 1-month sprint. C. Maximum 3 hours for a 1-month sprint. D. Maximum 1 hour per week of sprint length. Answer: C. Maximum 3 hours for a 1-month sprint. The sprint retrospective is a formal opportunity for the Scrum team to inspect itself and create a plan for improvements to be enacted during the upcoming sprint. Its time box is a maximum of 3 hours for a 1-month sprint, and for shorter sprints, it is usually shorter. For instance, a 2-week sprint would typically have a 1.5-hour retrospective. This time box ensures the team dedicates sufficient, but not excessive, time to continuous improvement, embodying the adaptation pillar of empiricism. Question 12. Which of the following statements about the sprint backlog is true? A. It is a commitment by the developers for the product owner. B. It is fixed and cannot be changed once the sprint begins. C. It is highly visible and reflects the developer's plan for the sprint. D. It is managed solely by the Scrum Master. Answer: C. It is highly visible and reflects the developer's plan for the sprint. The sprint backlog is composed of the sprint goal, the product backlog item selected for the sprint, and the plan for delivering the increment. It is a real-time picture of the work that the developers plan to accomplish during the sprint and is actively managed by the developers themselves. For example, if a developer realizes a task is more complex than anticipated, they would update the sprint backlog to reflect their revised plan. This transparency and ownership by the developers ensures they remain self-managing and adaptable. Question 13. When does a new sprint begin? A. After the sprint retrospective. B. Immediately following the conclusion of the previous sprint. C. When the product owner declares the product backlog ready. D. When the Scrum Master gives approval. Answer: B. Immediately following the conclusion of the previous sprint. Sprints are contiguous, meaning one sprint begins immediately after the conclusion of the previous sprint. There are no gaps between sprints, ensuring a continuous flow of work and consistent pace for the Scrum team. For instance, if Sprint 3 ends on a Friday, Sprint 4 begins the following Monday, or even Saturday if the team decides to work weekends. This continuous rhythm is fundamental to Scrum and reinforces the regular delivery of value. Question 14. What is the role of the Scrum Master during the daily Scrum? A. To lead the discussion and ensure all 3 questions are answered. B. To ensure the developers have the meeting and keep it within the 15-minute time box. C. To report impediments to the product owner. D. To record the progress and update the sprint backlog. Answer: B. To ensure the developers have the meeting and keep it within the 15-minute time box. The Scrum Master serves the Scrum team by ensuring that all Scrum events take place and are positive, productive, and kept within their time boxes. During the daily Scrum, the Scrum Master coaches the developers to keep the event focused on inspecting progress toward the sprint goal and adapting the sprint backlog, without leading the discussion themselves. For example, if the developers start to drift into a problem-solving session, the Scrum Master might gently remind them to take that offline and focus on their plan for the day. Their primary role is to facilitate and protect the event, allowing the developers to self-manage. Question 15. What are the three pillars of empiricism? A. Planning, execution, review. B. Transparency, inspection, adaptation. C. Analysis, design, implementation. D. Commitment, focus, openness. Answer: B. Transparency, inspection, adaptation. Scrum is founded on empiricism, which asserts that knowledge comes from experience and making decisions based on what is observed. The three pillars of empiricism are transparency, ensuring that the emergent process and work are visible to those performing the work and those receiving it; inspection, the timely checking of the progress toward a sprint goal to detect undesirable variances; and adaptation, adjusting a process or product immediately upon realizing that something is going wrong. For example, at the sprint review, the increment is transparently presented; transparency, stakeholders provide feedback; inspection, and the product backlog is adjusted accordingly; adaptation. These pillars are fundamental to how Scrum teams learn and improve. Question 16. Who is accountable for ensuring the Scrum team adheres to Scrum theory and practices? A. The product owner. B. The Scrum Master. C. The developers. D. The entire Scrum team. Answer: B. The Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is accountable for establishing Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide. They do this by helping everyone understand Scrum theory and practice, both within the Scrum team and the wider organization. For example, if the developers start to skip the daily Scrum, the Scrum Master would remind them of its purpose and importance for team coordination. The Scrum Master acts as a coach and guardian of the Scrum framework, ensuring its proper implementation to maximize the team's effectiveness. Question 17. A new developer joins the Scrum team in the middle of a sprint. What should the Scrum Master do? A. Prohibit them from joining mid-sprint to avoid disruption. B. Coach the existing developers on how to integrate the new team member and maintain the sprint goal. C. Have the new developer shadow the Scrum Master until the next sprint. D. Assign specific tasks to the new developer to quickly get them productive. Answer: B. Coach the existing developers on how to integrate the new team member and maintain the sprint goal. Scrum teams are self-managing, and it's their responsibility to manage their own composition and work. While a Scrum Master cannot dictate how to integrate a new team member, they should coach the developers on how to adapt their plan and maintain the sprint goal. For instance, the Scrum Master might facilitate a discussion where the team identifies tasks suitable for the new member and how to onboard them without jeopardizing the current sprint goal. The Scrum Master empowers the team to handle such changes themselves. Question 18. What is the primary purpose of the sprint goal? A. To define the scope of work for the sprint. B. To create a measurable objective that the product owner must achieve. C. To provide focus and flexibility for the developers in how they achieve the sprint backlog. D. To serve as a contract between the product owner and the developers. Answer: C. To provide focus and flexibility for the developers in how they achieve the sprint backlog. The sprint goal is the single objective for the sprint. Although the product backlog items selected for the sprint provide concrete details, the sprint goal provides the overarching purpose and allows the developers flexibility in negotiating the scope of the sprint backlog with the product owner if new challenges arise. For example, if the sprint goal is improve user experience for checkout, and the team encounters a technical challenge with one specific improvement, they might pivot to another related improvement that still fulfills the goal. It helps the team stay aligned even when unforeseen circumstances occur. Question 19. What happens if a sprint goal becomes obsolete during a sprint? A. The sprint must be cancelled. B. The product owner must define a new sprint goal. C. The Scrum team should try to adapt the sprint backlog. D. The developers stop working on the current sprint backlog items and wait for new instructions. Answer: A. The sprint must be cancelled. Only the product owner has the authority to cancel a sprint. A sprint would be cancelled if the sprint goal becomes obsolete, which might occur due to a company direction change, a shift in market or technology conditions, or if the product vision changes. If the sprint goal is no longer relevant, continuing the sprint would be wasteful, and cancelling it allows the team to pivot quickly to more valuable work. When a sprint is cancelled, any done product backlog items are reviewed, and all incomplete items are re-estimated and put back into the product backlog. Question 20. How does the Scrum Master serve the organization? A. By managing the product backlog. B. By removing impediments for the development team. C. By helping employees and stakeholders understand and enact an empirical approach for complex work. D. By ensuring that the increment is released to the market every sprint. Answer: C. By helping employees and stakeholders understand and enact an empirical approach for complex work. The Scrum Master serves the organization by leading, training, and coaching the organization in its Scrum adoption, helping employees and stakeholders understand and enact an empirical approach for complex work. This involves educating on the benefits of Scrum and dispelling misconceptions, extending beyond just the immediate Scrum team. For instance, the Scrum Master might educate department heads on how to best interact with Scrum teams to provide valuable feedback without disrupting their self-management. The Scrum Master helps foster an environment where Scrum can thrive across the entire organization. Question 21. Which artifact shows the work that the developers plan to accomplish during the sprint? A. Product Backlog. B. Increment. C. Sprint Backlog. D. Product Vision. Answer: C. Sprint Backlog. The Sprint Backlog is a forecast by the developers of what functionality will be in the next increment and the work needed to deliver that functionality. It details the product backlog items selected for the sprint goal, and the concrete plan made by the developers to deliver the increment. For example, if the product backlog item is, user can log in, the sprint backlog would contain the tasks like, create login page UI, implement authentication logic, and write unit tests for login. It acts as a highly transparent, real-time plan for the developers. Question 22. What is the product backlog? A. A fixed list of requirements for the product. B. An ordered, emergent list of what is needed to improve the product. C. A list of tasks for the developers to complete in a sprint. D. A commitment to deliver specific features by a certain date. Answer: B. An ordered, emergent list of what is needed to improve the product. The product backlog is an emergent, ordered list of everything that is known to be needed in the product. It is never complete and evolves as the product and the environment evolve, reflecting the adaptive nature of Scrum. For instance, a product backlog for an e-commerce site might start with, allow users to browse products, but continuously grow with new features like, add customer reviews, or implement mobile payments, as new ideas emerge. The product backlog is dynamic and represents the single source of work for the Scrum team. Question 23. Who is accountable for how product backlog items are turned into increments during the sprint? A. The product owner. B. The Scrum Master. C. The developers. D. The project manager. Answer: C. The developers. Within a Scrum team, the developers are the people who are committed to creating any aspect of a usable increment each sprint. They are accountable for self-managing their work and delivering a done increment, including all the technical work and decisions required. For example, they decide which design patterns to use, how to integrate different components, and what tools will help them complete the work. This accountability underscores the self-managing nature of the developers within the Scrum framework. Question 24. What is the role of the Scrum Master regarding impediments during the sprint? A. To remove all impediments for the developers immediately. B. To ensure the developers remove their own impediments. C. To facilitate the removal of impediments, or remove them if outside the developer's capabilities. D. To record all impediments and present them at the Sprint Retrospective. Answer: C. To facilitate the removal of impediments, or remove them if outside the developer's capabilities. The Scrum Master serves the Scrum team by causing the removal of impediments to the Scrum team's progress. This means they might coach the developers to remove impediments themselves, or step in and actively remove impediments that are beyond the developer's self-organizing capabilities, such as securing resources or resolving organizational roadblocks. For instance, if the team needs a new software license, the Scrum Master would work to obtain it, freeing the developers to focus on their technical work. Their goal is to maximize the flow of value by clearing obstacles. Question 25. What is sprint planning? A. An event to inspect the increment and adapt the product backlog. B. An event where the Scrum team forecasts the work to be performed in the sprint and defines the sprint goal. C. An ongoing activity to estimate product backlog items. D. A meeting where the product owner presents the next set of features to stakeholders. Answer: B. An event where the Scrum team forecasts the work to be performed in the sprint and defines the sprint goal. Sprint planning is the first event of the sprint, where the entire Scrum team collaborates to plan the work for the upcoming sprint. During this event, the team discusses, why is this sprint valuable, what can be done in this sprint, and how will the chosen work get done. For example, the product owner might present the most important product backlog items, and the developers would then forecast what they can realistically achieve and how they will achieve it, culminating in the creation of the sprint goal and sprint backlog. This collaborative planning ensures that the team is focused and aligned for the sprint ahead.